Today's local and national news from Thailand via the fabulous Pattaya Media Group. And if you'd be kind enough to like and subscribe, here's a tip for you to get the very latest news from us every day. When you subscribe, click on the button that says All. And then every day you'll get an update straight from us. We promised you that we'd have the answer to some of your educational problems with us this morning. And in the studio, let's welcome James Kemp. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, James is from the British Learning Center.
Absolutely, yes.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there just over a year now.
Right, okay. Now, a lot of people don't know what you do, so let's just cover a few things. And people pay for their kids to go to school, or they don't. Their kids go to school, but you're what we used to call a crammer school, really, aren't you?
Well, we would say we do supplementary tuition,
Right.
evening and weekends predominantly, but it's not necessarily cramming. There is a certain element of intensive lessons for some students, particularly those who are looking to go to international schools and get their English or maths up to scratch before they do. But we do have children who come to us 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, just to top up a little bit.
And so if you've got a subject that your child is a little bit poor on, that would be the subject to come and see you for.
Yeah, so we teach English, maths and science. I have to say predominantly it's English. Most of our parents are looking for. But it's not just if you're falling behind. We have some students whose parents feel they aren't getting the challenge that they require at their school. So they'll come to us and we can put them in year groups that are a little bit more challenging.
See, I find this kind of interesting because I'll be honest. This is honest revelation. I went to a grammar school when it got to O-levels because we had a teacher who taught mathematics and he was rubbish. And my prediction for O-levels was to fail. So my dad said, right, screw this. So he took me out of the school I was in, which was fee paying. Or as a borstal, I can't remember. And he put me in this grammar school with this fantastic Chinaman. And in 3 weeks, I'd got it.
Yeah.
Because he just had a different way of approaching that subject.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's the teacher, but also it's a lot to do with the location, just being somewhere else in a different environment, perhaps not with the distractions. Your mates probably aren't next to you.
Oh, yeah.
So just it's very focused as well. We have an hour lesson time with our students, so we make sure that there's high impact in that hour. It's quick, it's pacey. It's not the same way that it would be in a standard.
Is it one-on-one?
We do one-on-one and small groups.
Right.
Groups to a maximum of 8.
Going forward, my grandson, Thomas, is brilliant at mathematics. By the way, I'm very good at mathematics nowadays. When I left school, I became good at it.
Yeah.
Same with physics, same teacher. But Thomas is actually way advanced for his age.
Yeah.
So he's bored in class
because
what he's learning in school, he's like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that.
Come and see us. We can help.
Yeah, I'll bring him over. That's a good idea. So British Learning Center, I remember when you started, it was before COVID.
Yes, it was. It originally kind of started online with the owner, Ash.
Right.
And then during COVID, obviously. And then it opened properly at our location, East Pattaya, at the start of last year.
Right.
And it was Ash on his own with one assistant,
whom you know.
And a handful of students.
Yeah.
We're now at 300 students.
Wow. And it's a really, 300.
300.
It's a really nice facility. I've seen it. As you say, it is over here on the east side. It's easy to get to, just off Nurn Plab 1.
It is, yeah.
So very, very easy to get to. It's a very safe and secure place. The stories that we hear from education, without going into too much detail, unqualified teachers, people just go and get a TEFL because anybody can get that.
Stop looking at me.
Anyway, and unqualified teachers teaching.
Too
now,
many.
First of all, we're going to qualify you. So, James, are you ready for this?
I am.
Are you a real teacher?
I am, for my sins.
Okay, so where did you qualify?
Exeter University.
As a teacher?
Yes.
Right, and what did you teach?
My original training was upper primary humanities as a history specialist. I taught in the UK for 4 years at a school in East Devon, and then I made a big move and went to Lima and taught at the British School in Lima for 2 years. And then I've been in Thailand for 7 years, teaching in international schools.
And the British Learning Center only employs qualified teachers?
We have a combination of fully qualified QTS teachers, which is myself, Ash, and TEFL teachers. And I'll tell you why we do that. Actually, because most of my training is not in English second language.
Right.
So what we will do is have a teacher some of our teachers have 20 years experience.
Right, so they are qualified teachers still.
Qualified
Okay, yeah.
It's not just someone
right.
walking through the door. So
they've got degrees and
our applications process is quite rigorous.
Is it?
It is. It is.
How do you check them out? Because, a lot of people get worried. Years ago,
You could go down Khao Road and pick up a degree for 500
and
baht.
you get all sorts of weird people that you read about that get jobs in schools up north. How do you actually qualify a teacher?
References. Being very rigorous with the references.
Right.
And so it will typically be, we won't just take, oh, my mate says I'm a teacher. Where did you teach? Which school? Can we contact them? We've had teachers who've worked with the British Council, so we contact the British Council. And there is an element of, in that interview, you can tell if someone knows what they're talking about.
Really?
But we do then qualify that with reference checks. And also, once you come to our centre, if you are a teacher at our centre, that's not the end of the story. Some of these places, you're just left alone and crack on. Do an hour of hangman with the kids, and then we'll go. That's not what we do. We have a very, very rigorous lesson template that the teachers have to follow. We do lesson checks, we do observations. We keep it as close to being a day school as we possibly can.
Right.
Of course, we have to be more flexible, but we try to keep those rigorous standards in place, which I just don't think are there in a lot of other places. You walk in the door, there's your class, here's a textbook. So
get on with it.
That's not what we do.
Right. Okay. So international schools have been here for a long time. Let's look at the longest international school we know of around here, Regents, was started by one man. He sold it to a group, I think about 5 years ago. Educational group bought it, and it's a better deal now because they put a lot of money into it. You've got Regents, you've got the one that you worked at, what's that one called again? Pattaya. You've got MIS, which is an excellent school. You've got Rugby.
Yes.
You've got all these schools, and these schools are teaching these subjects. So why do parents whose children go to those schools then bring their children to you?
Well, we actually work very closely with those schools. I'm not going to name drop, but we do have agreements.
Go on, name drop. You can.
We won't tell anyone.
No.
Discretion is the better part of that. No, so what we do a combination of things. So one of the things we do is students will apply to go to these schools, and they're not quite at the level, particularly with their English, that school would like them to be before they can be accepted. So then they will refer them to us. And then they'll do a short period of perhaps intensive one-to-one or small group English. Will help them get to where they need to be, working very closely with the school, communicating with the school. The school will share their reports with us, share their initial assessment material with us so that we can target what we do. And then the child will then go to that school. But they'll often stay with us. They'll often reduce down from 10 hours a week to 2. And then we also have some schools that will refer to us for extra support. So maybe
that's what I was going to ask you about when we're coming up to exams.
Yeah, and just generally, they'll find that the children might be doing extra English or extra maths, and they're doing well, they're progressing, but they want a little bit of extra help, and the parents will come to them and say, "Whom can you recommend?" And actually, the schools that we work with, we're the first people that they've ever worked with, the first people they've ever recommended.
One of the toughest things for parents, and I taught my daughter mathematics because her teachers were rubbish in the UK. My granddaughter has a terrible problem with mathematics. And the issue that you come up with is that when you teach the traditional way, which actually works, from my generation, the kids are like, wow, that works. But it's not the way that's taught in the school. And when they go to the school and the teacher goes and they go, well, there's the answer. And it's right. The teacher, gets rather upset because you used a different system. So for parents, it's very difficult for parents to understand the methods that are used today to teach subjects that we learn't, but maybe in my case, when I was at school 10 years ago.
Yes.
Or 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Tough paper round.
Yes, it was a tough paper round indeed. So you keep up to date with all that stuff.
100%. One of the things we do that I don't think a lot of tuition schools do is we pay quite a bit of money to be part of a platform that is used by a number of international schools based in the UK where we can update our CPD. So,
what's a CPD?
Continued professional development. So that's part of my role at my school is I will find these courses and I'll say to our teachers, okay, well, I want you to complete this, and then we check that they do. So we're keeping our training up to date. We have to. It's a very fast-moving industry. But what I would say actually is oddly enough, the trend in education, particularly in the UK in the last 5 to 10 years, has been to perhaps row back and use more of those traditional methods because, as you say, they work.
Yeah, they do work, and they're a lot easier.
They work.
But do you find that when you get the pupils come to you for, say, mathematics, that actually the schools where they go are not up to date, or are they up to date?
A combination. I mean, there's a huge breadth of schools with whom we work. And some of them, of course, are using the Thai curriculum, which is a slightly different way of doing things and a different...
That's got to be difficult for you guys because you're not even going to know about that, are you?
Well, then part of our job then is to when a student joins us, to do a really good assessment and spot the gaps and then address those as best we can.
Okay. How many students have you got now?
So we're approaching 300 students.
300, that's a lot for a
Wow.
brand new business, isn't it?
Yeah, that come into the school, and we've also got about 50 learning online.
Oh, you do online teaching as well?
Typically students who obviously might have returned home, but subjects that we can't teach. So, for example, GCSE and A-level science and maths, we won't wing it.
So where do you get the teachers for that?
Well, a lot of them teach at international schools
Oh,
here in
okay.
Thailand, and they're looking to supplement their income, and also some in the UK as well.
I've been here for 15, 16 years, and the number of international schools has increased dramatically in those years.
Massively so.
Why?
It's. I'm not sure I've got an answer to the why, apart from I think parents value education incredibly so, and a lot of parents who are here, they're able to be here because they themselves have reaped the benefits of being well educated. There are several factors, I think. A lot of the large industry that's out here, part of the package when you come here is that there's either money towards or the entirety of your fees are paid
Yes, if you're
for.
working here, yeah.
And I think it's that there's been a large influx, particularly after COVID, of parents coming from China who have got the resources to afford a very high quality education. And education is something that I believe they prize there. In particular, we noticed this as a tuition school. I think in the UK, I mean, similar story to yourself, I had to do a bit of extra tuition to get into my secondary school. It was,
Right.
With the deputy head, I'd stay for an hour after school just to get me up to where I needed to be with my maths again. But it seems to be the norm in a lot of countries here that you do a few hours after school. You do piano lessons, and you do some...
Yeah, they do in Korea. In Korea, the education system is so...
I think one of the things that we do is, we are a business, but we're teachers first. And sometimes we have to just talk a parent down a little bit because they'll say to us, we want to do 4 hours a night and we want to do this and we want to...
4 hours?
Well,
that's-
I'm giving
Oh,
a slightly extreme example. But we then have to say to the parent, actually, this isn't what we feel is best for that child at that time. They need their rest. They need to do something else. So there is a bit of that where while we are a business, we do have to maintain that kind of professional integrity, I would say, and consider child well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be a very... you're talking about Chinese students. What do you think the demographics are changing? We went from Western to a lot of Russians. There's less Russians now in the private schools, but now we've got the Chinese. How do the schools adapt to that?
Well, having a very strong English second language program.
Ah, right.
So that when they come in, they're assessed. They'll sometimes stream. So there will be an English second language program where the students will do things like PE, design technology together, art together. But then for English and maths, English, and humanities subjects, they'll do quite intensive courses. I know several schools around here have very specific programs that they use to do that. And then the students will be integrated back into kind of a mainstream class.
Right.
Or they speak to us. And we can help.
Right.
Particularly bridging that gap in the initial stages when a child is applying.
Where do you see schooling going?
Well, looking at what's happening, I mean, in Pattaya, we've got 3 international schools that are on or over 1,000 students each. In Bangkok, there's over 170 schools that would call themselves international schools,
Right.
depending on your definition of what you feel an international school is. Also, some of the local schools here have experienced an early 20% rise in boarding. So it would seem that boarding...
Get rid of your kids. Yeah. There's your suitcase. Off you go, Tom Brown.
Yeah. Well, the big thing there is weekday boarding. So, and that seems to be, particularly if you've got kids who are a little bit older.
That's popular in the UK as well.
Yeah, and they're studying really, really hard. And let's say you live in Jomtien and your child's at a very good school in Pong.
And you like going out Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
and you like a bit of personal time to yourself. But also, if by the time you've got home and had dinner, done your homework, it's straight to bed. Whereas if the kids are boarding, they have that time to focus. And on the weekend,
Go home.
everything's done. You've done the homework. It's just quality time together.
That's a good idea, actually, because without naming the name, a school actually in Pattaya, where this little boy I was telling you about before, he went to school there. It was a great school, and he did very well. But they finished school, he wouldn't get home till 6 o'clock because the bus had to go this wiggly, squiggly trip that looked like a QR code before he finally got to his home. So poor little kid got home at 6 o'clock at night. He'd leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely wiped out.
And a third of his day was spent sitting in a minivan.
Yeah, 100%.
So I can understand why boarding
it's not
would
quality
really
time
work.
if you've got back. Also, if you're a working parent, it just frees you up a little bit because sometimes we're having meetings till late and things like that. And then when you do have those weekends and those holidays, it can be quality time.
Good. Okay, so if somebody wants to find out about you, the best thing to do is just Google you, British Learning Center Pattaya.
Yes, and we've got quite a strong social media presence. I keep getting complaints from friends of mine saying, why do they see my head at
I blocked it.
why do they see my head at breakfast? That's not what they want to see. But yeah, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, but Google us. We're not hard to find. British Learning Centre.
James, thanks so much for coming in.
Not at all.
A lot of
Pleasure.
people listening on the radio, they're not going to be interested in education because they haven't got kids.
Of course.
Or they got, the kids are grown up and stuff. But there's an awful lot of people who are. And I think you've answered a lot of questions today that have been on people's minds. And people are worried. If they've got children, they want them to have a future.
Yeah.
They really do. Thank you for joining us.
No problem at all. My pleasure.
James Kemp from the British Learning Centre on Fabulous 103.
Fabulous.